2302 at 2:35 for our next meeting. Come meet new folks who feel supported.
Our October activity this Thursday, October 14th, right after school. We'll be celebrating Bob Ross's birthday cake, singing along to one another. See you there.
Students, the competition is on. FBLA, SECA, and SPUs are challenging all of you to donate canned food to students that are on the school. Whichever first period class reaches the most number of food items by Tuesday, October 12th, that's tomorrow. Your last chance to win breakfast delivered to them by Mr. Cameraman himself.
Hola, for Hispanic Heritage Month, the Latinos in Action class is doing a clothing drive to help other Latinos. Please help us by giving out new or slightly used clothes of any type. The clothes we donate to Alliance Community Services. These clothes are due by October 15th. Please drop out any donations to Mr. Griffin's room, 2605. Gracias.
Attention ladies, if you are interested in a fun scholarship opportunity in gaining valuable life lessons, the Miss Harriman is for you. There is still time to register. You can head to the Miss Harriman Scholarship Facebook page or head to http://www.harriman.org/arts-council and click on Miss Harriman.
Remember, Powder Puff is today, 3:30 to 5. Come cheer on our most day.
And now for the pledge. Please stand and repeat the pledge after me. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and remember, Emily, what kind of day is it?
It's a great day to be a Mustang.
Okay, here's your prompt for today. A little bit more free form than what we've been doing lately. So you're just talking about a space that you'd like to be in, and you find personally enriching. It's a way to get us into talking about setting. Race, your entire group is gone, huh? Just talk with those boys up there. All right, so talk about setting for a second and what a space that you like.
The chair has to be comfortable.
Okay, you know all about each other's favorite spaces. Sorry, give me a second. A hectic morning today. see, do I need this anymore? Did I just need it for the prompt? I could have written that on the board. Yes, okay. Last time we ran out of time before I could get you some more vocabulary. So open up those blue pages. Let me give you a couple vocab words. You're going to try to find a fixed form. I told you about stanza already, right? It should be right under stanza. All right, fixed form is a poem that complies with a set number, poem that complies with a set number of lines, rhymes, and or metrical arrangements. That one again. Poem that complies with a set number of lines, rhymes, and or metrical arrangements. So there are certain poems that or poetic forms that I don't know who decided, but someone decided that this is how they should be. So things like sonnets, or there's something called a villanelle, or limericks, or haikus. Those are all fixed form because they say, okay, you have to have this many syllables per line, or you have to have this metrical sort of cadence to it. It needs to be rhyming here and here, etc. So that's the fixed form. And the opposite of that one is called free verse. So that's on the next page, I think. All right, so free verse is poetry that does not rhyme or have a regular meter. And we should say probably that does not have a regular rhyme or a regular meter, because there can be a couple lines in it that rhyme, but it just doesn't have a rhyme scheme. So it doesn't have a regular rhyme or regular meter. So when we look at the two Robert Frost poems that we talked about, we had Mending Wall and we had The Road Not Taken. Which one of those, if you remember, was fixed form and which one was free verse? I mean, one of them actually does have a meter to it. So I don't know if we would even call that totally free verse, but I think The Road Not Taken, you remember how it's got that rhyme pattern to it? It actually, everybody turn to The Road Not Taken. I want you to find the rhyme pattern there. So do it the A, B, C, D, E, F. Try and mark the meter, the rhyme scheme, sorry. Try and mark the rhyme scheme in The Road Not Taken. And remember, when you switch stanzas, you don't have to switch letters. So if the pattern stays throughout, you're just going to use A's and B's. Okay, now listen to it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, and took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim. It's not perfect, but it's got a kind of rhyme to it, or a kind of meter to it, right? And then what's the rhyme scheme? Yeah. Oh, yeah, A, B, A, B. Yeah, and it keeps doing that over and over again. So we would call that one fixed form. It follows that pattern really closely. It's in what I'm going to, it's in these stanzas of 5 lines each, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look at Mending Wall, and it doesn't have this strict rhyme scheme. And yeah, it has a meter, but it breaks that quite a bit. I would call that one more free verse. Not completely, because it does have that meter, but it leans more on the free verse side than the fixed form side. All right, and then let's talk about couplets, and this is let's do a few of these. Let's get a few of these out of the way so that we're filling up these definitions. So a couplet, 2 lines of verse, usually in the same meter and joined by rhyme. 2 lines of verse, usually in the same meter, joined by rhyme. For it to be a couplet, it really has to rhyme. It doesn't have to be the same meter, but it does have to rhyme. So an example of a couplet would be from Prufrock. It says, in the room, women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. He even breaks to like really show you this is a couplet. Like it's like the only 2 lines that it says like these 2 lines rhyme and they sound nice together. So that's a couplet. In the room, women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. But a couplet doesn't have to be its own stanza.
So it'd be like the AA.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and a heroic couplet, and I don't know why it's called a heroic couplet. I should look up the etymology at some point, but it is a couplet in rhyming iambic pentameters. It's got to be an iambic pentameter to be a heroic couplet. So every sonnet, every Shakespearean Elizabethan sonnet ends in a heroic couplet. So I'll say it one more time. Couplet in rhyming iambic pentameters. So open to the Shakespeare Sonnets, the last little section of your gray pages, and just pick the last 2 lines of any of those, and you will see heroic couplets. Like I'm on sonnet 116. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. It's a, I shouldn't have chose that one. It's an I rhyme, but it's a heroic couplet. Let's do this one. 129. All this the world knows well, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell. There's a heroic couplet. And if you want to, under example, you could just write down last 2 lines of the sonnet as an example. Or you could copy the 2 lines. Oh, that's what mending is. All right, a blank verse. Blank verse is a verse without rhyme that uses iambic pentameter. So that's what mending wall is. Sorry. Mending wall is blank verse. It's verse without rhyme using iambic pentameter. So a whole lot of Shakespeare monologues are blank verse. A lot of them don't rhyme. Some of them do. Some of the most famous ones do. But a lot of times when Richard III gets up there and delivers this whole monologue, it's not rhyming, but it's in this blank verse. It's in iambic pentameter the whole time. It gives a real formality to the sound. All right, a tercet. Are you with me? Am I going too fast? Okay. A tercet is a group of 3 lines of verse connected together. A group of 3 lines of verse connected together, usually by rhyme. But people disagree about that because English is fun and you get people disagreeing about stuff like this. But a tercet is 3 lines put together. So basically, I would use the word tercet if I am seeing a stanza that is 3 lines long. And a quatrain is like a stanza that is 4 lines long. And again, traditionally those rhyme, but they don't have to. People disagree on that part. So a stanza that's 4 lines of verse is a quatrain. Is there any more I want to give you? No, let's stop there. That's enough definitions. Do you need me to repeat any of those? Yeah. Yes, a blank verse is verse without rhyme using iambic pentameter. And the example I gave was like a Shakespearean monologue. Any more to repeat? Good job. You guys we're all over the place. We can follow along, right? Okay, let's open now to the yellow pages in the back here. This is the very first yellow page. So I have copied off a test for you guys, an AP poetry test and what that would look like. And then I've got all of these different sample essays, and we're gonna look at the sample essays here in a second. I did 2 of them, I think. Okay. Yeah, I did Echo Sonnet, but I don't know that I copied off the actual poem for you for Echo Sonnet. Or did I do 3? Sorry. Doesn't matter. First page. This is a poem called by Derek Walcott. He's a Caribbean poet, and he does a lot with setting in this poem. So the first thing we're going to do is just talk about the poem and how the setting kind of works in here, and how it creates meaning. And then we're going to do a kind of walkthrough for this and how you might approach a timed poetry essay like this. This is how you would spend your time. So to read the poem, here we go. With the frenzy of an old snake shedding its skin, the speckled road scored with ruts, smelling of mold, twisted on itself and re-entered the forest where the Dasheen leaves thicken and folk stories begin. Sunset would threaten us as we climbed closer to her house up the asphalt hill road, whose yam vines wrangled over gutters with the dark reek of moss. The shutters closing like the eyelids of that mimosa called Tea Marie. Then, loosened as papered lanterns, lamplight glowed through the ribs, house after house. There was her own lamp at the black twist of the path. There's childhood, and there's childhood's aftermath. She began to remember at the minute of the fireflies, to the sound of pipe water banging in kerosene tins, stories she told to my brother and myself. Her leaves were the libraries of the Caribbean, the luck that was ours, those fragrant origins. Her head was magnificent, Sidonie, I think it's Sidonie. In the goalie of her voice, shadows stood up and walked. Her voice travels my shelves. She was the lamplight in the stare of 2 mesmerized boys still joined in one shadow, indivisible twins. Okay, so let's say you're taking this test in 2015 and this is the poem that you get. I think one of the very first things that you want to do is just scan that poem quickly and see if it's got meter to it. So take 30 seconds or so to see if it's got any meter. All right, is there any sort of regular meter in this poem? Are you able to tell, or are we just tired, or are we not able to tell? Kim?
I don't think there's
Okay, you're right, because listen to the way that you'd have to like really stress this. With the frenzy of an old snake shedding its skin, the speckled road scored with ruts, smelling of mold. Okay, there it kind of has a little bit of a twisted on itself and re-entered the forest. Do you see how, like, even if you try and force it into some kind of a pattern, it's not fitting into that pattern? This doesn't have a regular meter to it. So if you were to write about meter on the test, it would be okay. Like, that doesn't mean that meter is irrelevant. You'll find some lines in this that seem to have that kind of pattern to it, but it's not going to be the most significant thing to talk about in this poem. And it's probably going to feel a little bit forced if you're trying to talk about meter too much in the poem. So if it doesn't have, well, look at this. Does it rhyme? See if there's a rhyme scheme to it. All right, any rhyme scheme? No, there isn't a rhyme scheme, right? So it doesn't have a regular meter. It doesn't have a rhyme scheme. What kind of poem would this be according to the definitions I just gave you? Yeah, it's a free verse type, free form type poem, right? So because of that, you can't talk too much about the structure of this. And instead, you're going to want to talk on maybe smaller content details. You still want to talk about the form of the poem. This is still a story told in poetry. So you're wanting to talk about how the poetry creates the story, right? But you're not going to be able to talk about these big overarching patterns. So then you got to find the small things. So I want you to look through and I want you to find an example of consonants. Actually, let's start with alliteration. Start with alliteration. Find alliteration in this poem. See if there's any. Okay, where was some alliteration that she found? Yeah, Sammy? A lot. Snake, shedding, skin, speckled, scored, smelling. There's so many repeated S sounds there, right? Do you remember what repeated S sounds, the word for that is? It's yes, but it's also called sibilance. So specifically, if S sounds are repeated over and over again, it's called sibilance. If you remembered that on the test, you would impress them so much. But it's got this kind of like snaky sound, right, at the beginning, as an old snake sheds its skin. Where else are some alliteration in this? Alliteration is repetition at the beginning of words. What was it? Closer. Why am I not seeing it? Can you tell me what line that is? Yep, climbed closer. Good. That's a great one. Okay, where else is some alliteration? Race? Yes. Her house. And whose as well. Her house, whose. It sounds the same. Okay, anyone else? Any others? It's all over the place. This poem is full of alliteration. There's at least like one word there. You can find them. Yeah, Jacob?
Line 10, house after house.
Yeah, we'd probably call that more repetition because it's got the actual words there, but it does kind of have that who sound repeating over and over, right? Yeah? Yeah, Remy?
9 and 10, Houston, Lanterns, Lamplight.
Yes, lucent, lanterns, lamplight. You see how alliteration can also move on to the next lines too. Good. We got threaten and thicken. We've got leaves, libraries, and luck. All over the place. All right, and as I'm noticing that there's so much alliteration in here, I kind of want to start paying attention to the sounds that are repeating. I've got S sounds repeating, H sounds repeating, C sounds repeating, and L sounds repeating, and some THs. So I'm kind of like keeping track of that as I go. Okay, now let's open that up to consonants, not just alliteration, but consonants, which is like, it could be at the beginning of the word, it can also be in the middle of the word. Look where you can find some consonants. All right, where'd you find some interesting consonants in this? The S sound's also used with the consonants, the frenzy, an old snake shedding its skin, speckled throat, scored with ruts, smelling of mold. So twisted on itself. It's like the first 3 lines is like full of consonants and alliteration with that S sound. Where else is some consonants? Sammy? Wait, which is, oh, the N sound. Yeah, the N sound is repeated there. Good. And Dasheen has that N sound too. Yeah, where else is some assonance? Or sorry, consonants. Yeah, Kill.
I think it's like line 15, so
In and tins has that N sound repeating. It also has assonance there where it's got the I sound repeating, right? So it's actually creating a rhyme. My favorite one is Dark Creek. Like to have that K sound repeated over and over again. All right, so there's lots of consonants in here. There's M sounds repeated, L sounds repeated again, and now we've got these K sounds repeated over and over again. All right, now find some. Here we've kind of thought about these things. There's assonants all over the place too. Find some rhymes. And these can be internal rhymes or they can be end line rhymes. Find some places that rhyme. Okay, this time I want you to tell each other where you found the rhymes and just point them out to each other.
oh, we got road.
The most obvious one is probably Fireflies.
If it's gonna rhyme, it has something. Should stay.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, run.
Did you find some internal rhyme? Keep looking, then there's internal rhyme here too. All right, tell me which words that have rhymed. Have rhyming. Yeah, Remy.
7 and 8 gutter shutters.
Good, yeah, so that's called an internal rhyme. right? It's an internal, it's something that's within the line rhyming with something else that's within the line. So gutters and shutters rhyming. That's a good one. Where else is some rhyme in this poem? Yeah. Ooh, good one. Road and mold. That's kind of a, well, let me ask you, what's the vocabulary word for that kind of rhyme? Remember? This one, it's actually, they actually look very different, but they kind of sound the same. Like you can imagine Drake making them sound the same. Right? That's always where I go to. But it's, yeah, slant rhyme. Yeah. Yep, slant rhyme. So the other one is called an I rhyme, and this one's called slant rhyme. Where else is some rhyme in this? Not just internal, anywhere. Yeah, Audrey? Path and aftermath. Yeah, and they're right in a row. So what would we call that? That is a couplet. Yep. So you've got a couplet in the middle of this poem. Good. Where else is some rhyme? Did you guys see? Yeah, Audrey.
There's like tins, origins, twins.
Yes. Tins, origins, twins, and even Caribbean, if you were to pronounce it that way, you know, and you've got lots of ins around that part too. You've got in kerosene tins, in the goalie of her voice, in the stare of two mesmerized boys, still joined in one shadow, in is all over the place in that last part. All right. So we've looked at this, we've got all of these sound things that we're paying attention to, right? And clearly this poem is also paying attention to those kinds of sounds. So even though it doesn't have clear meter and it doesn't have a clear like rhyming scheme, it is still interested in the form of the poem. But what might be more interesting in this poem is actually what is happening and how he is using this sound, right? So don't be afraid when you're talking about poems in your essays to talk about the actual content of it. You're just talking about how the poetry form is informing the content. Because I'm seeing a lot of essays that are like very naming all the different things we see in the poem, but not yet connecting them back to the theme. So let's do that now. With the frenzy of an old snake shedding its skin, the speckled road scored with ruts, smelling of mold, twisted on itself and re-entered the forest where the dasheen leaves thicken and folk stories begin. That's the first sentence of our poem. So our first sentence gives us like a lot of setting details. What would you say about this path and this road? Like what kind of tone does it have, Audrey?
The first sentence I got to do is like twisting in on itself, like an Ouroboros, like the snake eating itself.
Ooh, I like that. I don't know how to spell it. I'm gonna draw it. Yeah, okay, so it becomes this like snake eating its own tail. So what kind of meaning can we pull out of that? Like, why is that significant, do you think, for a setting?
What does he?
I don't know, but it's really disturbing if you think about it.
Snake eating its own tail. It's like for infinity, but it's also like self-destructive. I can't remember what that symbol means, but it's like significant symbol. I can't remember.
Have any of you guys watched Secret of Kells?
No, but yeah, it's like, I mean, even if we don't know exactly what it is, because I don't know what the meaning, like the etymology of the meaning or anything, but yeah, you can. We've got this idea of like self-destruction, but we also have this idea of the infinite, but not in a necessarily pleasant way. Like it's not the infinite when you would talk about like heaven. It's more the infinite, it's an infinite associated with snakes and like creepy crawly type thing. So it's got this like unsettling feeling right at the very beginning. Yeah. Tell me what other words or what other sounds even contribute to the unsettling feel at the beginning of this. Did you find out what the meaning is?
Yeah, so it's like an allegory to like alchemy. So it's representing the concept of eternity and endless return. So it's the eternal path.
Endless return. Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, because it's like the 4 stages of alchemy. What are they? It's like libido, albedo. There's more. It's like colors. It's like black to white to red to gold.
Yeah. So
Where are you guys learning about alchemy?
I don't know.
Are you guys reading your witchcraft books?
I love
Oh, okay. That's awesome. All right, let's keep that in mind because I like this idea of alchemy in this poem. I think it fits in really well. So what other words at the beginning of this create this kind of tone of like a little bit unsettling? Yeah, Sammy.
The second line is very like in your face. It's kind of rude.
Okay.
Speckled road, but it's more more, it's kind of so it's like kind of going down.
Okay, good. Yeah. So it's definitely like this, at least I get the feeling that it is a dirt path, you know, that it's full of ruts. It doesn't say potholes, it says ruts. So I'm assuming it's this like kind of village type, and I know we read through it and we get that from other parts, but we've got this like village type feel to it and it stinks. Yeah, Remy.
Oh, 3 and 4. We entered the forest where the dashing needs thicken, and then the footnote down at the bottom, dashing or tropical is a tropical plant with large leaves. So these giant leaves, and you're in this forest, giant leaves, and then it starts to thicken. So there's even more leaves, and it means like you see less.
Yeah, good. There's kind of this oppressive feel at the end, Ben.
It feels almost like claustrophobic, like the mold is like kind of sticking on you, as
Yeah.
well as like snake shedding its skin, like it's taking up more of your space.
Yeah, and I think of a snake shedding its skin must feel a little claustrophobic too. That it's like trying to get out of that like kind of like extra skin. Yeah, Audrey.
And it's also the like shapes, the snake shedding its skin is kind of going on between the concept because it's like getting rid of the old, like, but it's still.
Yes, awesome. I like that. So it's like a continuation of the snake. Write these things down so I can steal them for the next class. Continuation of snake. Yeah, snail. Sorry. Kale, yeah. New nickname for Kale.
I love it. Okay. I think it's interesting because normally when poets describe like the forest, they describe it as like beautiful and luscious, thick with undergrowth. But these descriptions are sort of like snake skin, mold, and it just kind of makes you think this forest is like kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we don't know what's gonna be
dirty or,
hiding in
like,
there.
Maybe it's got like trash in it or something.
To me, it doesn't feel like trash because it feels like it's going to be, it's so far removed from society. To me, since all of the imagery is natural, like it doesn't smell like garbage, it smells like mold. It feels like it's almost like this like step away from civilization. And it says like, this is where folk stories begin. So if you were to tell like if you're thinking of like folk stories, fairy tales, even like you think of the beginning of fairy tales, this reminds me quite a lot of like a Hans Christian Andersen, like, have you read Hans Christian Andersen stories? They're dark. Grimm's fairy tales are also very, very dark. So maybe we should just stick with Grimm, but like they've got this feeling to the beginning where the characters who are usually children are stepping into something extremely dangerous. And yet we are so excited that they are doing that. Like without them stepping into the dangerous situation and the creepy forest that's covered in like thick dasheen leaves, then we're not going to get the story. So it's like this way that the snake twisting in on itself and like twisting through the paths presents this possibility, but the possibility is really kind of scary. And like that word frenzied immediately sets the tone that you do not know what's going to happen, you know? Okay, and it says, sunset would threaten us as we climbed closer to her house up the asphalt hill road. Oh, it's asphalt. Well, sorry. Sunset would threaten as we climbed closer to her house up the asphalt hill road. Tell me about the language there, sunset would threaten. Yeah, okay, good. So like the sun going down is what is becoming the threat, right? And so we've got this like, sunset, but we've got this like twilight feel to it. That's when I can't see the most. I don't know about you guys with glasses or eyesight problems. When it becomes twilight, even with my glasses, like I have a really hard time seeing. And so it's like this, I can see better at night than I can at this time. And it's like this in-between transition phase where you're not sure what it is. Is it dark? Is it light? And it's threatening as we climbed closer to her house up the asphalt hill road, whose yam vines wrangled over gutters with the dark reek of moss, the shutters closing like the eyelids of that mimosa called Tea Marie. So tell me about this house. Yeah, Remy.
Back to the sunset.
Mhm.
Just one second. since it's normally like this peaceful thing, but then when you add the threat, it's like it's just.
Yes, it's kind of the same as like the forest road. Like usually we see them as like peaceful and like, you know, the birds are singing or whatever, but by adding the dasheen leaves that thicken, it creates that kind of sense of threat. Yeah.
It's also interesting because like sunsets are very beautiful, but it's kind of like the calm before the storm because it's like as the sun is going down, night is also approaching, and night can be dangerous.
Yes.
So it's like it's threatening because it's the threat of it going away.
Yes.
The bad things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So tell me about her house, because I like this as a folktale house. He's going there. He says this is where folk stories begin. And then we show up to this house and it has yam vines wrangled over gutters with the dark reek of moss, the shutters closing like the eyelids of that mimosa called Tea Marie. Yeah.
It's almost like those haunted houses or whatever that you always see in movies, and it's like the dark sky and there's like a lightning strike always and whatnot, but the shutters are closed and like it's overgrown and everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it's got that like really common trope of like the haunted house type feel. Audrey?
Like a witch house.
Yeah, it
Witch
is.
house.
It's like a witch house, right? You know, look up, like, if you've got your computer, if you've got a phone, look up what mimosa looks like and look up what yam vines look like. If I'm remembering. But mimosa, you're going to get pictures of drinks first. I hope it's not blocked. I think yam vines are like purple usually, right? Yeah, like sweet potato vines.
It's yellow.
Shamed.
Oh, sweet potato. Yeah, they are like a yellow. All right.
It's yellow, that's the third stage of alchemy.
Oh, really? So we're like actually going through alchemy here?
Yeah, I went to like, because it starts with black,
Uh-huh.
and so it's black, white, yellow, and red. That's the stages, and red's always life. And so the
Interesting.
fact that there's like a person at the end.
Gosh, hang on, I gotta write that down. Black, then to white.
So it's the magnum opus.
Yeah.
It's Negrito, black, Albedo, white, Citrinitas, yellow, and Rubino, red.
Okay, this is adding a whole new level of meaning to this poem. That is so cool. All right, so cool. Yeah, you've got these yellow vines all over everything, right? So when I picture this house, I kind of picture like, and maybe because it says Caribbean, but I kind of picture like that house when you're on the Pirates of the Caribbean and the little fireflies are everywhere, and it's like that old man on the porch is like going back and forth. That's right before you go off this drop. There's like a lushness to it, but there's also a witchy, creepy quality to it, but not one that's like, if you're brave enough, it's going to be super cool. But it's not one that you are like in the movie, do not go in there. In the movie, you want them to go check out this house. Sammy? I did not know that. You guys are finding out very cool things here. DMT, psychedelic.
Like people who've been on it have had suicidal tendencies.
Okay, so you've got this like you still have the dark reek of the moss, which I assume is like sort of like that mold sound to it. It smells like living things, you know, but also it's like that's a kind of a good smell too, you know. That's those smells that are like, you don't, it's not like you want to smell like that thing, but it's also one that you want to keep smelling. My husband is from a place where they grow mushrooms, and this is what I'm always thinking of. Like, it's like got something sort of like good that smells, but then if you smell too much, it's gonna like start stinking. It's like that kind of like living smell. Does that make sense? Aroma, I should say.
The smell of dating.
No.
No.
Man, the other day this place stunk so bad.
Yeah.
Like, when was that? Thursday?
Yeah.
And I don't, that's what, because that was like
It's like
horse
gross
manure.
range.
That was like the smell of like farmers. I feel like, I don't
It's not like
liquid trash when it was raining. I was like,
Oh, it
literally
was
smells
so
like trash.
bad.
Like, I was
Yeah.
like, what kind of pollution are we putting in the air to make the rain smell like shit? Sorry, it smelled so bad.
It smelled bad.
smelled so
It might be a
bad.
natural phenomenon though, because sometimes in Rose Park it'll smell like that because of like the lake. So maybe it's just a like
It
effect thing.
always smells like a duck pond though in the morning.
Oh.
Like,
Okay, that reminds me of this because it's like something like living, something like
just with all the sprinkles.
beaded is the word I want to say. Yeah. Okay, so it's got a kind of dampness to it. All right, so then here are the shutters, and it says lucent as paper. Then long dash, lucent as paper lanterns, lamplight glowed through the ribs. House after house, there was her own lamp at the black twist of the path. So what happens right there, I think there's a little turning point in the way that we're viewing the setting. Up until this point, it's been like a little bit like, I'm gonna say like seductive, and it's like folktale quality, but also off-putting because we're associating it with snakes and all of these like kind of creepy crawly type things. And like the growth is like too much and it thickens too much. Yeah.
Well, you see this like light in the house, and it says through the ribs, and some houses don't normally have ribs, but like you get this feeling of like it's going through the cracks in the house or whatnot. Like the house is super old, and so you're seeing this light in the house, and if it's so overgrown, why is there light in the house when there's not many people there?
Yeah, good. So like as you're coming into this setting and it says house after house, so it's almost like you start to notice that there's other houses too, and all of this light starts shining around you. And to me, I get that feeling of like the firefly, like it's like kind of like flickering all around you. And to me, that sounds beautiful. Yeah, Audrey.
It's like the lamp like burns the ribs. It's like behind the ribs is your heart.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, the ribs, behind the ribs is the heart. So it's like the emotion of the house, like the people who actually live there and who actually give it like its sort of appeal. I love the L sounds repeating there. Lucent lanterns, lamplight glowed. La 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 la. L is a very pleasant sound. I would say that line has some euphony to it, where it's like lucent as paper lanterns, lamplight glowed through the ribs. Like it's a nice kind of sound to say out loud. And then you've got a black twist of the path, and there's her house. So we're going to someone's house on this journey. And it says there's childhood and there's childhood's aftermath. And we get this line that's like kind of stuck here in the middle, but we know that it's significant because it's attached to a couplet. So there's childhood and there's childhood's aftermath. What does that mean? Remy?
Well, in the introduction to the poem right up there, it says the speaker recalls a child who expects a visiting mother who is a storyteller. And so it's this, the speakers reminiscing in childhood, but now they're after childhood, and so now they're going through the motions again. It's like they have deja vu.
Yes, that's what it feels like to me too, a kind of deja vu. And I like that you said deja vu because it's repeating words too, childhood. So we got that sense of repetition, and house after house repetition. So it's got this like feeling of like reminiscence. Yeah, Audrey.
And I think it's significant that this is childhood twice, like childhood's aftermath, because it's like how we use like the life and birth of Christ to denotate time. It's like,
Yeah.
it's so significant. There was this, and then there's everything that came after.
Yes, I like that. And I like that he uses the word aftermath for that too, because aftermath is usually something we talk about with like a disaster. What's the aftermath of this? Like this was such a significant event. And even if it's not a disaster, it's such a significant event that what is going to come after is constantly going to be informed by what came before. She began to remember, this is the woman that they've been looking for. She began to remember at the minute of the fireflies. Describing it the minute of the fireflies. What is that, by the way? Like the minute the fireflies show up, the minute that you spot a firefly. We don't have fireflies here, so it might be the minute of the starlight, like the minute that it turns into night. And that's how she's defining night. She starts to remember, and keep that word remember in mind as we talk. To the sound of pipe water banging in kerosene tins. I picture this place being so humid that they've got like tins set up everywhere for the dripping of water, even when it's not raining, stories she told to my brother and myself. So she began to remember at the minute of the fireflies, sound of pipe water banging and kerosene tins, stories she told to my brother and myself. Okay, so we've got quite a significant shift now. She's remembering stories and she's talking to, we've been introduced to a new character, the brother. She's talking to the brother and the speaker of this poem, right? Her leaves were the libraries of the Caribbean. Yeah, what does that mean?
I don't know, it kind of like reminds of whoever this first woman is that she's so in tune with nature. She kind of reminds me of like a witch or something in the woods.
Yeah.
With her like plants going.
Right, yeah, and she's starting to tell these stories, and the stories are coming, it seems like, from this connection to nature, that she has this in tune to nature, so that she like looks around her and sees everything around her, and that is what is causing her to remember the stories. And it says these are the libraries of the Caribbean. Why do you think she chooses, or he chooses to use the plural of the word libraries there? Because he could have said that the leaves are the library of the Caribbean, right? But libraries. Yeah, Ben.
I think it kind of talks about the like diversity of the culture, saying like her stories come out of the folk in nature.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a diversity of stories, and I think it's a plethora of stories. It's like a sort of just overwhelming amount of stories too. And I think you're right, because it's of the Caribbean. It's like of all of these different places. The luck that was ours, those fragrant origins. So we started with this like creepy kind of like go into the black, deep, dark woods, right? And yet we end with this idea that they were so lucky to be hearing these stories. Her head was magnificent. Sidonie. I always look that up every year and I never remember who that was. You want to look that up for me? I want to say it was a queen. Oh, you know what? Maybe it's talking about her name.
Mhm.
Yeah, her head was magnificent. Sidonie. Like maybe that's what her name was. In the gully of her voice, shadows stood up and walked. Tell me about that. In the gully of her voice, shadows stood up and walked. What is happening as they listen to these stories? What does the gully of her voice mean? Huh? The depths of her voice. Okay, good. So we get this idea that she's got like a really deep, like soothing voice, right? And the shadows are getting up and walking. So are we going back to this being a super creepy scene, or what does that mean? The shadows that get up and walk? Asher?
I think it's less like shadows, like creepy shadows, and more like memories.
Yeah, good. So we get this idea that like it's peopled with stories. Yeah.
I'm thinking about like kind of Plato's allegory of the cave, and also like some anime from the 90s, the Revolutionary Girls, and they have these shadow girls that tell like parts of the story, but it's like the marionette dolls or something. Shadows.
Yeah, good. So it's like so it's kind of creating this like sense of the stories coming alive then, and with Plato's allegory, it's like this is the reality that we preferred. Okay. And then it says, her voice travels my shelves. So we've moved now from the past tense to right there, we move into the present tense. Her voice travels my shelves. Which shelves is he talking about?
His experiences and memories, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's that. It's like as I'm like looking through all of the things in my life, like her voice is sort of like traveling through all of it, right? This is childhood's aftermath. And it says, she was the lamplight in the stare of two mesmerized boys, still joined in one shadow, indivisible twins. So at the very end here, we get a little bit of a theme about how he and his brother are connecting over these stories, right? Tell me about that idea, indivisible twins. She was the lamplight in the stare of two mesmerized boys, still joined in one shadow, indivisible twins. Yeah, Audrey?
Kind of like Gemini.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so tell me why is that significant here?
It's like the constellation Gemini, it's like those two are like stuck together.
Okay,
It's
good.
like
So they're
conjoined
in,
twins.
like
They can't be
conjoined
divided.
twins. They're indivisible. They can't go anywhere without each other. They're still joined in one shadow. That word still tells me that they're not anymore, you know, that they've created some distance between the two, but that she was someone who brought them together by being this lamplet in both their eyes. Yeah.
I think it's sort of like, once again, reminiscing of childhood.
Yes.
Maybe the speaker had like a twin. They were like conjoined at the hip. They were like doing everything together. Now they've grown up, but and they've like moved on with they're doing their own things. So,
But they've got this connection in the story to keep sort of populating their lives. Yeah.
It's also like your shadows can overlap, even if the two that are casting the shadow aren't touching at all.
Yes, and I think that's the image here, right? Is that the shadows are like they're in one, they're sitting in the shadow together, and she's sort of like the one light in the room. Okay, that's us talking through sort of just the meaning of this and how it is creating meaning, right? Hopefully, when you come to do this poem on the test, that'll take you about 5 minutes. You're reading through it really quickly, figuring out what it's saying, right? And then it comes time to like actually write the thesis statement. And what you're trying to do here, let's read the prompt. In the following poem by Caribbean writer Derek Walcott, he came and spoke at BYU once, he was amazing. The speaker recalls a childhood experience of visiting an elderly woman storyteller. Read the poem carefully. Then, in a well-developed essay, discuss the speaker's recollection and analyze how Walcott uses poetic devices to convey the significance of the experience. All of the prompts that you're going to get on these are going to sound that generic. It's just going to be like, look, here's like the basic plot of this. Here's sort of like a couple little details. I'm not going to tell you, you know, everything about this, but you then need to talk about the significance of it. And that is just a nice way of saying, and I don't know why they don't say it this way, write about the theme of this poem and how the poet is using form to create that theme. You know, how this poem being a poem creates that theme for you. So it's always going to be talking, all three of the essays on the AP Lit test are talking about theme. You're always trying to find the theme. Okay, so I'm going to have you do something a little bit strange. So I'm going to have you kind of spread out. If you want to, you can go out into the hallways if you're embarrassed about doing this, but I'm going to be having you talk into your phone and record yourself. Does everyone have a phone here today that can record them? Okay, cool. All right, so you're going to be recording yourself. I want you to record yourself. I'm going to time it for at least 3 minutes, and you're basically just babbling about this poem for 3 minutes. You're trying to talk about what you think the theme is, but don't worry about what you are saying. This is just for you. I'm never going to hear this. So don't worry about like exactly getting the words exactly right. And if there are multiple themes, talk through multiple themes. So you're basically talking for 3 minutes about what you think this poem means and what you think the theme might be of this poem, and just recording yourself into your phone. All right, so spread out, because you don't want to be sitting right next to somebody when you are recording this, because you'll pick up their voice too. And if you want to go into the hall, you can go into the hall. I'm going to set a timer because I need you to talk for at least 3 minutes. If you feel like you're running out of things to say, then you got to just return to the poem and keep trying to talk. I'll come out there after 3 minutes are up. Okay. Everyone have their record app open on their phone? So you guys just take 3 minutes out there. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Start talking. Okay. You have more to say? You can keep talking if you want. All right, I'm gonna pull those other people in. Okay, so sometimes I will do this because I'm a crazy person. I will just be in my office talking to myself about ideas, especially when I was having to write for grad school. I would talk to myself for like 30, 45 minutes, an hour sometimes, trying to get all of my ideas down. And I found like I would discover some really interesting things when I was just speaking and when I was like forcing myself to keep talking. So now I am going to have you listen back to your recording. And as you are listening, I want you to take a couple notes on what you think is the most significant stuff that you said. So just listening to it, if you've got headphones, yeah, totally, you can use those, and just jotting down a couple of things. If you think all 3 minutes were significant, then I want you to think about how you're going to shape a theme and a thesis statement around this. So you're just jotting down a couple of things that you think is the most important for creating your thesis statement. Okay, take a few minutes, listen to it, jot down some stuff. Bless you. Yes, yeah, you go outside. Okay, after you've listened to your recording, I want you to write down now a thesis statement. So a thesis statement for a poem is going to include something about the theme. And remember, a theme is a complete idea or like almost like an argument for the poem. And then plus something about the form. Now the form can be things like connotation, denotation, setting, characters, but it can also be about sound and I don't know, rhyme. Like in poetry, it can be all those different things, all the things that a story has, but then all the things that a poem specifically has. So see if you can write a thesis statement about this one. Raise your hand if you've got a thesis statement. Keep working. Okay, now raise your hand if you have a thesis statement. It looks like more people. Okay, so this next part, I know this is a little bit awkward, but you are going to record yourself talking to someone now. So you need a partner for this one. I think we're odd numbers. So Sammy, Race, and Sydney, you guys want to just work as a trio? Okay, so for this one, you're going to record yourself explaining your thesis statement to your partner. So you're gonna have like somebody here in front of you in order to do this really effectively. You're explaining the thesis state to them and you're telling them about the order that you think you're gonna explain ideas. So you're saying like, here, I need to explain this part first, and then I'll talk about this part, and then this part, and this part. Here's why I think these ideas work together. You're basically just explaining to them what the final paper is going to look like. Make sense? All right, I'm gonna have you do 2 minutes for this one. And so decide who's gonna go first so we don't waste the time on that. Decide now.
Should we each record it or just one of us record it?
So you're each gonna record when you are speaking to your partner. All right, so you know who's going first? Okay, go ahead, 2 minutes, go.
Alright, so my thesis statement is that science mixing modern application of natural science as reality with childhood memories are often twisted into something more majestic. So basically, I'll probably invite everyone to just like there are a lot of like the kerosene tin, the pipe, just kind of like cuts into that sort of natural set. Sharp contrast kind of. He's recounting all his childhood memories. So good.
And then after he talks about how.
The order I'm gonna talk about stuff.
I'm gonna explain a little bit about my thesis statement. Then I would discuss the various elements. Then I would point out, and I would analyze the various elements of how they contrast with the natural world. Probably do
What's your overall argument?
overall argument is that non-natural elements of the story are bad childhood. Contrasting natural. Any thoughts on how I conclude the thesis statement?
We should probably say that. Because we're then saying that there are natural elements of the story.
Okay. All right. Now I want you to also record your partner telling you the order that they think they would talk about your thesis in. Does that make sense? So you're going to look at their thesis, have it in front of you. So it's still the first person's thesis that we are looking at. Have it in front of you and tell them how you think you would order this thesis statement. Okay, I'm just going to give you 1 minute for this one. And you are recording your partner speaking now. Okay. Go.
So with the order of.
Okay, so,
It's not gonna talk about first.
Yeah, okay. So,
The natural images are good.
at the beginning,
So,
I would think that you say, maybe use,
Your second choice is to say that
I would
find three instances of
like, I guess, and use this
either good memory,
just because like the strongest.
like using.
I mean, I would feel like the strongest because you got, like you're saying, youth and like he's reminiscing about his youth, like his childhood and then after childhood. And then you've got this like darkness and like this light, right? So you want to end with two forces. And then the metaphorical imagery to this point. And then you use that imagery. I think you use that little section
Okay, next person's turn. So now this person is taking 2 minutes to explain their thesis and the order they're thinking of writing about. Okay, ready? Go.
Okay, it's a little wordy, but like this quote shows that all dark moments and
Okay, so my thesis
by transitioning from
states
dark
that
thinking,
all
using
kinds of symbols of alchemy and evil
And
emphasizes transience
Oh,
of memory, suggests
I would have to
that
whittle it down.
returning to one's
A little
origins
wordy,
as
but
a cycle
I'm trying to go through this like
Deep jungle and
So
so using this, like I think
I looked
it's all
at it,
juxtaposition.
found out that the Ouroboros is also an
Something
African
else will
chemical
support it,
symbol.
but
The Ouroboros is
I
the
want to
symbol
show
of
that
old
like
philosophers.
the beginning versus the end of the poem is like
But
it transitioning from this dark setting to a more pleasant one, right? And then in the
so that one
and then
automatically I thought
another
about
point
how alchemy is always about
is that
natural elements of the gold,
even though
which
the
already
speaker here
emphasizes
has
the
like
value
age,
of
he
something.
still remembers his age, still
So
like
the first paragraph will be about
so like
the
one
like
this
imagery of the
dark
black
to light,
asphalt
and then
road
this
to
other
the
one
light
of like
paper to the glow of the sun and the white light
youth to
to
age,
the
and like or
magnificence of her
and not necessarily youth to age, but like youth
because
to
gold was always red.
youth
so I feel
with
like
age.
I won't like that there.
Youth within, and so it's not like so it's like this
Dark
dark light, but
is
then
red.
How they have like changed time.
similar aspect of
So
youth to age, and then like
And the second
so
one
it's like this
will be about
seeing
the
the
Ouroboros.
positive
The
in
first one will be
the
about Ouroboros,
like
size
your
of that
youthful
useful
cycle.
cycle. Second one finds value in it, and the third is about the transience of
When
memory.
you go through these dark
Cycles have value to the
especially like
subject
you're
of
showing
the
through
the shadows and
this
light.
dark force,
Because light
the
rays
first part
are
of the book suggests, and then you
repositories for
remember your
memory.
youth, and now you're like in the light rays.
Interesting, so you're kind of
And so
arguing
that's what
that
I'm trying to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
All right, and then 1 minute for your partner now to tell you how they might order your idea. Go. Oh, go ahead.
Alright, so I think you really do a good job, but I would make sure, that you're explaining clearly exactly what you're about, because what you are explaining is something that not a lot of people know about, but Ouroboros, I'm sure people know about sage eyes. But like the idea of like the black to white to yellow. I only got 2 of the colors down. I would make sure to like explain that and like maybe the significance of the colors and see if that could relate more to it. Because red, as you mentioned, symbolizes life. Tied out to the nature, like the life of the child. There you go. There's my comment.
Okay, and then the trio over here, you haven't had chance to do all 3, right? Okay, so everyone's got to find 1 new partner. You 2 just go like that instead. And then Kalen, run over to Ethan real quick, and Asher, run over to Enoch real quick. And I want you to tell them, you don't have to record this time, but tell them about your thesis statement. So go back and forth for this one, and you can talk about both. All right, and for the trio, last person go. You have 2 minutes. You're recording yourself. Go.
Is that this poem says that all their comments are good, or I guess I'm really good from previous moments. I think this is directing because you think the goal projections. And like this poem and you've got like people snake shit. Even though this thing is old, it's still getting and then the dark versus the pessimism is like the youth of the speakers or the youth of the kids, I guess, versus the stories, right? Yeah, but
So I want to make these ideas.
Okay, and then for the trio, you're shifting, so they are telling you now how to order it. Go. All right. Okay, you can head back to your seat. I put up here an example of what my little outline would look like. So I've got a thesis that says using assonance and consonants, Walcott creates a setting that shifts from dangerous to exciting to welcoming, showing the power stories have to bond us together for life. Okay. Then I've got the way that I've kind of broken it apart. I'm looking at the theme mostly. I'm not saying here's examples of assonance, here's examples of consonants. I'm trying to find a way that's a little bit more substantial to move through the poem. So I kind of start at the beginning and the middle. I look at this shift in the middle about the couplet, and then at the end, I'm looking at the rhyme. So I'm kind of going through the poem in that order. All right, so I want you, we might not have time to get through all of this, but you can listen to your recordings that you made of you talking about the order. And I want you to make yourself a little outline like I did up here. It can be like very basic. The blue stuff is where I'm actually looking at the actual evidence, but you can just look to the black stuff up here for how you would break this apart by idea. So you can do this on a separate sheet of paper. If you still have room on the poem, you can write it there, but you're going to try and create a little miniature outline for yourself if you were to actually write this essay. And don't worry, you don't actually have to write the essay.
I kind of want to write an essay.
Isn't it such a great poem?
Really fun.
I
really like it.
agree.
It has good vibes.
It does, yeah.
Excellent vibes.
You can write it wherever you have room. If you want to do it on a separate sheet of paper, you can. Do you need a piece of paper?
All right.
Okay.
I'll just write on.
Okay, sounds good.